The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but Marcus Johnson was already awake. His small one-bedroom apartment buzzed faintly with the sound of cars passing by on the busy street outside. The air inside felt heavy, a mix of last night's cooking smells, and the dampness that seemed to cling to everything in this part of town. Marcus glanced at his worn-out wristwatch. It was 6:30 a.m., time to get moving. Today wasn't just another day. Today was special. For weeks, Marcus had been preparing for this moment, practicing answers to possible interview questions and ironing his only decent shirt. He had spent hours researching the company online, learning everything he could about their products, mission, and values. This was his chance, a real opportunity to step out of the cycle of low-paying jobs and endless bills. If he got this job, things would finally start looking up. Marcus lived alone now, though his mother often called to check on him. She still lived back in their hometown, a small city 2 hours away, where she worked long shifts at a diner to make ends meet. Every paycheck Marcus earned was split between his own needs and sending money home to help her. Life hadn't been easy for either of them, but Marcus always held on to hope. Hope that someday, somehow, things would change. He stood in front of the cracked mirror hanging on the wall, adjusting his tie. The shirt was slightly too big for him, bought secondhand from a thrift store months ago, but it was clean and pressed. His shoes were scuffed, but he'd polished them until they gleamed under the dim light of the room. Marcus took a deep breath, trying to calm the nervous energy building inside him. "You've got this," he whispered to himself. Outside, the morning air was cool as Marcus stepped onto the sidewalk. He tightened his grip on the folder holding his resume and references, making sure nothing slipped out. The bus stop wasn't far, but the walk felt longer than usual today. Maybe it was the weight of what was ahead, or maybe it was just the lack of sleep. Whatever it was, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. As he approached the intersection near Main Street, the noise of the city grew louder. Cars honked impatiently and people hurried past him, lost in their own worlds. That's when he saw her. A young woman stood near the curb, clutching her purse tightly. Her hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and she wore jeans and a hoodie, nothing fancy, but there was something striking about her face. She looked scared. Before Marcus could process what was happening, 2 men appeared beside her. One of them grabbed at her purse while the other blocked her path. The woman tried to pull away, shouting for help, but no one around seemed to notice or care. Without thinking, Marcus dropped his folder and sprinted toward them. "Hey!" he yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos of the street. The 2 men turned to look at him, surprised by the sudden interruption. One of them smirked, clearly not intimidated by Marcus's lean frame. But Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped closer, positioning himself between the attackers and the woman. "What's your problem?" the taller man growled, shoving Marcus backward. Marcus stumbled but quickly regained his footing. He clenched his fists, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "Leave her alone," he said firmly, his eyes locked on the men. For a moment it seemed like they might actually listen. Then the shorter man lunged forward, swinging wildly at Marcus. The punch caught him off guard, grazing his cheek, but Marcus recovered quickly. Years of working odd jobs had taught him how to handle himself in tough situations. With a swift motion, he dodged another blow and landed a solid hit on the taller man's jaw. The impact sent him stumbling backward, cursing loudly. Seeing their advantage slipping away, the 2 men exchanged glances before bolting down the street. Marcus watched them go, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. Only then did he turn to the woman, who was still standing frozen near the curb. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softer now. The woman nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't shown up." Marcus shook his head. "Don't mention it. Just glad I could help." He bent down to pick up his folder, which had fallen open during the scuffle. Papers were scattered across the ground, some crumpled and dirty. He sighed, knowing he'd have to fix them later. But right now, his focus was on the woman. "I'm Rachel," she said, offering her hand. "Rachel Monroe." Marcus Johnson, he replied, shaking it briefly. You're bleeding, Rachel pointed out, nodding toward his cheek. Marcus touched it lightly and winced. Sure enough, there was a small cut where the man's fist had grazed him. It's fine, he assured her. Just a scratch. Rachel insisted on buying him coffee as thanks, pulling him toward a nearby cafe. Marcus hesitated, glancing at his watch. He was already running late for his interview, and every minute counted. Still, he couldn't leave her alone after what had happened. Reluctantly, he followed her inside. The cafe was warm and smelled of freshly brewed coffee. Rachel ordered 2 cups and handed one to Marcus, who accepted it awkwardly. I can't thank you enough, she said, her tone sincere. People don't usually step in like that. It's not a big deal, Marcus replied, shrugging. Anyone else would have done the same. Rachel smiled faintly, studying him for a moment. There was something genuine about him, his humility, his willingness to put himself in harm's way for a stranger. She wanted to ask more about him, but Marcus was clearly distracted. His fingers drummed nervously against the table, and he kept glancing at the clock on the wall. I should probably go, he said, finally standing up. I've got somewhere important to be. Rachel frowned. Because of me? Did I make you late? No, it's not your fault, Marcus assured her. This was my choice. And honestly, I'd do it again if I had to. He gave her a small smile before heading toward the door. Take care of yourself, Rachel. As Marcus walked away, Rachel watched him disappear into the crowd. Something about him stuck with her, his kindness, his bravery, the way he carried himself despite the obvious struggles in his life. She didn't know it yet, but this encounter would stay with her far longer than either of them expected. Meanwhile, Marcus hurried toward the bus stop, his mind racing. He knew he was going to miss his interview, and the thought weighed heavily on him. All that preparation, all those dreams, he hated the idea of letting them slip away. Still, as he replayed the events of the morning in his head, he couldn't bring himself to regret helping Rachel. Sometimes doing the right thing came at a cost. He just hoped it wouldn't cost him everything. Marcus's heart sank as he stepped off the bus and approached the towering glass building where his interview was supposed to take place. The sleek skyscraper loomed above him, its polished windows reflecting the morning sunlight. He felt out of place just standing there, clutching his folder of wrinkled papers and wearing a shirt that suddenly seemed too worn to be appropriate. The lobby was bustling with people in sharp suits, their confident strides and crisp attire making Marcus feel even smaller. He walked up to the reception desk, trying to ignore the stares from those passing by. The receptionist, a young woman with a polite smile, glanced up at him. Can I help you? She asked. I'm here for an interview, Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the nerves bubbling inside him. My name is Marcus Johnson. The receptionist typed something into her computer, then frowned slightly. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry, but the interviewer left about 10 minutes ago. They waited for a while, but since you didn't show up on time, they assumed you weren't coming. Marcus's stomach dropped. I was delayed, he stammered. Something happened on my way here. Is there any way I can still meet with them? Please, this means a lot to me. She shook her head apologetically. I'm really sorry, there's nothing I can do. You'll have to contact HR if you want to reschedule. Her tone wasn't unkind, but it might as well have been a dismissal. Marcus nodded, forcing himself to smile weakly before turning away. He found a quiet corner near the elevators and sat down, feeling defeated. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. All the preparation, all the sacrifices. He'd let it slip through his fingers because of a decision he couldn't take back. Sure, saving Rachel had been the right thing to do, but now he wondered if it was worth it. Would anyone ever give him another chance? Meanwhile, Rachel Monroe returned to her penthouse apartment in the heart of Atlanta. The contrast between her life and Marcus's couldn't have been starker. Her home was modern and luxurious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city skyline. She set her purse down on the marble counter and sighed, replaying the events of the morning in her mind. Rachel wasn't used to being vulnerable. As the CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the country, she prided herself on being strong, independent, and always in control. But today had been different. Today she'd needed someone else, and Marcus had stepped in without hesitation. His bravery and his humility afterward had left a deep impression on her. She opened her laptop and began reviewing emails and contracts, trying to focus on work. Yet, every few minutes, her thoughts drifted back to Marcus. Who was he? What kind of person risked their own plans to help a stranger? And why did it feel like she owed him more than just a simple thank you? Determined to find answers, Rachel picked up her phone and called her assistant, Linda. "Linda, I need you to look into something for me," she said, her tone firm but calm. "This morning, near the intersection of Main Street and Fifth Avenue, I was involved in an incident. A man intervened to stop two attackers from stealing my purse. I want you to check the security footage from nearby cameras and see if we can identify him." "Of course, Ms. Monroe," Linda replied. "Do you have any details about him?" "He's African American, mid-20s, maybe 5'10". He was wearing a white shirt and dark pants. Oh, and he had a folder with papers. It got knocked over during the scuffle." Rachel paused, remembering the kindness in his eyes. "His name is Marcus. At least that's what he told me." "I'll get started right away," Linda promised. Rachel hung up, feeling a strange mix of guilt and curiosity. Guilt because she knew Marcus must have sacrificed something important to help her. He hadn't struck her as someone who could afford to miss opportunities. Curiosity because she wanted to understand what drove him to act so selflessly. Whatever the reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to repay him somehow. Back downtown, Marcus wandered aimlessly after leaving the office building. He didn't want to go home yet. Facing the empty walls of his apartment felt unbearable. Instead, he found himself sitting on a bench in a small park, staring blankly at the fountain in front of him. Water danced in rhythmic patterns, catching the sunlight and scattering rainbows across the pavement. It should have been calming, but Marcus's mind was anything but peaceful. He thought about his mother, who relied on him to send money each month. How would he explain this failure to her? She'd never blame him, of course, that wasn't her nature, but he hated letting her down. He also thought about the countless hours he'd spent studying and practicing for this interview. Every rejection letter he'd received prior to this moment flashed through his mind, reminding him how hard it was to even get a foot in the door. And then there was Rachel. Despite everything, Marcus couldn't bring himself to regret helping her. She'd seemed genuinely grateful, and her warmth had made the chaotic morning feel almost worthwhile. Still, he couldn't deny the frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Why did these things always happen to people like him? People who worked twice as hard for half the reward. As the afternoon wore on, Marcus decided to head to a local diner where he occasionally picked up shifts washing dishes. It wasn't much, but it paid enough to cover his rent and utilities. If nothing else, keeping busy would keep his mind off the disappointment of the day. When he arrived, the manager greeted him with raised eyebrows. "Didn't expect to see you today, Marcus. Thought you had that big interview." "It didn't work out," Marcus muttered, tying an apron around his waist. He didn't elaborate, not wanting to relive the embarrassment. The manager gave him a sympathetic pat on the shoulder before heading back to the kitchen. For the next few hours, Marcus focused on scrubbing plates and stacking glasses. The repetitive motions helped dull the ache in his chest, though they couldn't erase the lingering sense of failure. By the time his shift ended, the sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets. On his way home, Marcus stopped at a convenience store to grab a bottle of water. As he stood in line waiting to pay, he noticed a newspaper racked near the counter. One headline caught his eye: "Tech Titan expands outreach program for underserved communities." Beneath the bold text was a photo of Rachel Monroe, smiling confidently as she addressed a crowd. Marcus froze, recognizing her instantly. So she was more than just a random stranger on the street. She was someone important, someone powerful. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Had he unknowingly crossed paths with one of the most influential people in the city? And if so, did it matter? He doubted someone like Rachel Monroe would remember him beyond that brief encounter. Still, as Marcus walked home under the dim glow of streetlights, he couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting had been significant. Maybe it was wishful thinking, or maybe it was hope, a stubborn belief that sometimes the universe threw you curveballs for a reason. Either way, Marcus resolved to keep moving forward. Life had taught him that setbacks were inevitable, but giving up wasn't an option. Little did he know Rachel was already searching for him. Days passed and Marcus tried to move on from the missed interview. He told himself it was just another setback, one of many he'd faced in his life. But no matter how hard he tried to push it out of his mind, the memory lingered. He couldn't stop thinking about Rachel, the way she had smiled at him, her voice trembling with gratitude, the way she seemed so genuine despite the chaos of that morning. To distract himself, Marcus threw himself into work. Between shifts at the diner and applying to other jobs online, he barely had time to breathe. The rejections piled up, each email, a fresh reminder of how difficult it was to break into a world that felt designed to keep people like him out. Still, he refused to give up. Every night after finishing his shift, he sat at the tiny kitchen table in his apartment, updating his resume and searching for new opportunities. It was exhausting, but quitting wasn't an option. One evening, as Marcus wiped down tables at the diner, he noticed someone walk in. At first, he didn't recognize her. She wore jeans and a hoodie, just like the day they'd met, but this time her hair was loose, framing her face in soft waves. When their eyes met, Marcus froze mid-motion, the rag still clutched in his hand. "Marcus?" Rachel asked, her voice warm and familiar. She smiled nervously as if unsure whether he'd remember her. "Rachel," Marcus said, straightening up. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to thank you again," she replied, stepping closer. "For what you did the other day. I've been meaning to find you, but, well, it's a big city." Marcus chuckled softly. "Yeah, I guess it is." He glanced around, suddenly aware of how messy the diner looked compared to the polished places Rachel probably frequented. "Do you want to sit down? Can I get you something?" Rachel shook her head. "No, I'm fine. Actually, I came to give you these." She held out 2 tickets neatly folded in her hand. They were printed on thick cardstock embossed with gold lettering. "They're for a charity gala my company is hosting this weekend. I thought maybe you'd like to come." Marcus stared at the tickets, stunned. "A gala? For me? Well, not specifically for you," Rachel admitted with a small laugh. "But yes, for you. Consider it a thank you, and who knows? Maybe it'll be fun." Marcus hesitated. He'd never been to anything like a gala before, never even imagined attending one. People like him didn't belong in those kinds of settings. But Rachel's expression was so earnest, so hopeful, that he found it hard to say no. "I don't know," he said slowly. "It's not really my scene." "Come on," Rachel urged gently. "It could be good for you. Plus, it's for a good cause. My company is raising money for programs aimed at helping underserved communities get access to tech careers. You might find it interesting." The mention of tech careers caught Marcus's attention. He'd always dreamed of working in technology, but the barriers felt insurmountable. Still, the idea of seeing firsthand what companies were doing to create opportunities intrigued him. "Okay," he said, finally nodding. "I'll go, thanks." Rachel's face lit up with relief. "Great. It starts at 7. Dress code is formal. I'll send over some details later." As she turned to leave, Marcus called after her. "Wait, Rachel. Why are you doing this? I mean, we barely know each other." She paused, turning back to look at him. For a moment, she seemed unsure how to answer. Then she said simply, "Because you deserve it. What you did for me, it meant a lot. More than you realize." Later that night, Marcus lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. The gala tickets sat on his bedside table, glowing faintly in the moonlight streaming through the window. He couldn't believe Rachel had gone out of her way to invite him. Most people would have forgotten about him by now, moved on with their lives. But Rachel was different. There was something about her kindness, her sincerity that made her stand out. Still, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of unease creeping into his mind. What if he didn't fit in at the gala? What if everyone could tell he didn't belong there? He'd spent his whole life navigating spaces where he felt like an outsider, and the thought of walking into yet another unfamiliar world filled him with dread. But deep down, a part of him was curious. Curious about Rachel, about her company, about the kind of person who would offer a stranger such generosity. Maybe this was his chance to see a side of life he'd only ever dreamed of. Maybe, just maybe, it could lead to something bigger. The day of the gala arrived faster than Marcus expected. He borrowed a suit from a friend who worked at a rental shop, making sure it was clean and pressed. Standing in front of the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The suit fit surprisingly well, giving him a confidence he hadn't felt in years. His shoes were still scuffed, but he polished them until they gleamed under the light. When he arrived at the venue, a grand hotel downtown, his nerves kicked into overdrive. Valets greeted guests arriving in luxury cars, and the entrance was lined with photographers snapping pictures of elegantly dressed attendees. Marcus felt completely out of place, clutching his ticket like a lifeline. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and candles, the air buzzing with polite conversation and laughter. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne, and a live band played soft jazz in the background. Marcus scanned the room, searching for Rachel. He spotted her almost immediately, standing near the stage, talking animatedly with a group of people. She looked stunning in a sleek black dress, her presence commanding attention without effort. Rachel saw him too and excused herself from the group. "Marcus," she said warmly, walking over to greet him. "You made it." "I did," he replied, managing a smile despite his nerves. "Thanks for inviting me. This is incredible." "You look great," she said, gesturing to his suit. "Really sharp." "Thanks," Marcus said, tugging at his collar self-consciously. "You too." Rachel introduced him to several people throughout the evening: executives, philanthropists, and community leaders, all of whom seemed genuinely interested in hearing about his background and goals. Marcus stumbled over his words at first, intimidated by their titles and accomplishments, but Rachel stayed close, guiding the conversations and putting him at ease. At one point, during a break in the program, Rachel pulled him aside. "How? Are you holding up?" she asked quietly. "I'm surviving," Marcus admitted with a grin. "This is all pretty overwhelming, though." "You're doing great," she assured him. "Honestly, I think you're impressing a lot of people here." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Impressing them? Doing what?" "Tripping over my words." Rachel laughed softly. "No, showing them who you are. Your passion, your determination. It shines through. Trust me." Before Marcus could respond, the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the keynote speech. Rachel guided him to a seat near the front, explaining that she'd be speaking shortly. As the presentations began, Marcus listened intently, amazed by the initiatives being discussed: programs to provide coding classes for kids in low-income neighborhoods, internships for young adults transitioning out of foster care. It was everything he'd ever hoped for, but never believed possible. When Rachel took the stage, the room fell silent. She spoke eloquently about the importance of diversity in tech, sharing personal stories about overcoming obstacles and finding success. Toward the end of her speech, she paused and looked directly at Marcus. "A few days ago, I had an experience that reminded me why this work matters so much," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "A man named Marcus Johnson stepped in when I needed help, risking his own plans to ensure my safety. What struck me most wasn't just his bravery. It was his humility, his willingness to act without expecting anything in return. Tonight, I want to honor that spirit of generosity and resilience, because if we can create opportunities for people like Marcus, imagine the impact we can have on the world." The crowd erupted into applause, and Marcus felt his cheeks flush with embarrassment. He hadn't expected Rachel to mention him publicly, let alone highlight his actions in such a meaningful way. When she returned to her seat beside him, he leaned over and whispered, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she replied firmly. "You deserve recognition, Marcus. Don't ever forget that." By the end of the night, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope he hadn't felt in years. Rachel stayed true to her word, introducing him to key figures within her company and encouraging him to apply for open positions. For the first time in a long time, Marcus allowed himself to dream, not just of escaping poverty, but of building a future where he could make a real difference. The days following the gala felt surreal to Marcus. He couldn't stop replaying the events in his mind, the elegant ballroom, the speeches, and most of all, Rachel's words about him during her keynote address. It wasn't just the fact that she had publicly acknowledged him. It was the way she spoke about his actions with such sincerity and admiration. No one had ever praised him like that before. For years, Marcus had been told, directly or indirectly, that he didn't belong in certain spaces, that his background made him less worthy of success. But Rachel saw something different in him, something valuable. Rachel kept her promise to help Marcus find opportunities within her company. The next morning, she sent him an email with a list of open positions and instructions on how to apply. She even offered to write him a personal recommendation letter, which meant more to Marcus than she probably realized. With her support, Marcus updated his resume, tailored his cover letter, and submitted his application for a junior role in the company's tech department. As the weeks passed, Marcus threw himself into preparing for the possibility of another interview. This time, he wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. Not bad luck, not nerves, and certainly not self-doubt. He spent hours researching the company again, memorizing details about their projects, values, and mission. He practiced answering common interview questions in front of the mirror, rehearsing until his responses sounded natural. Every night after finishing his shift at the diner, he sat at his kitchen table surrounded by notes and printouts, determined to give this opportunity his absolute best shot. Then, one afternoon, while Marcus was wiping down tables at the diner, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, expecting another rejection email. Instead, he saw the name of Rachel's company flashing across the screen. His heart skipped a beat as he opened the message. Subject: Interview invitation. Dear Mr. Johnson, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for an interview for the Junior Tech Associate position at company name. Please confirm your availability for the scheduled date below. Best regards, HR Department. Marcus read the email 3 times before it fully sank in. He had done it. He'd gotten another chance. A wave of emotions washed over him: relief, excitement, and a touch of fear. What if he messed this up too? Shaking off the negative thoughts, he quickly replied to confirm his attendance and called his mother to share the news. Her voice cracked with pride when she heard what had happened. "I always knew you could do it," she said. "Now go show them who you are." On the day of the interview, Marcus woke up early, double-checking every detail of his outfit and rehearsing his answers one last time. He arrived at the office building 15 minutes ahead of schedule, determined to make a good impression. The receptionist greeted him warmly and led him to a small conference room where 2 interviewers were waiting. The first interviewer introduced herself as Sarah, the head of human resources. The second was a man named Kevin, who worked in the CEO tech department. They started with basic questions about Marcus's background and experience. At first, Marcus felt nervous, but as the conversation went on, he grew more comfortable. He talked passionately about his interest in technology, his determination to learn, and his belief in the importance of creating opportunities for people from underrepresented communities. When they asked why he wanted to work for the company, Marcus thought back to Rachel's speech at the gala. "I want to be part of something bigger than myself," he said honestly. "Your company is doing amazing work, not just in tech, but in helping people like me break into fields we don't always get access to. I believe in your mission, and I know I can contribute to it." Sarah and Kevin exchanged approving glances. By the end of the interview, Marcus felt confident he had given it his all. As he left the building, he allowed himself a small moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Things were finally starting to turn around for him. A week later, Marcus received another email. This time it was an offer letter. He stared at the screen, reading the words over and over again. "We are pleased to extend an offer of employment." Tears welled up in his eyes as he realized what this meant. Not only would he have a steady income, but he'd also be working in a field he loved, surrounded by people who believed in him. He accepted the offer immediately and called Rachel to thank her. "You earned this, Marcus," Rachel said when he reached her. "Don't forget that. I just gave you a push. You did the rest." Her words stuck with her self-deprecation. He vowed to prove her right, to show everyone that he belonged here. Marcus's first day at the company was overwhelming but exhilarating. The office was sleek and modern, filled with employees typing furiously on laptops or discussing ideas in hushed tones. Everyone seemed so focused, so driven. Marcus worried he wouldn't measure up, but Rachel had arranged for him to shadow a senior team member named Jamal, who took the time to explain everything patiently. Jamal noticed how hard Marcus worked, and how eager he was to learn. "You're going to do great here," Jamal told him one afternoon. "People see your potential. Just keep doing what you're doing." Over the next few months, Marcus immersed himself in his new role. He attended training sessions, asked endless questions, and stayed late to finish assignments. Slowly but surely he began to gain confidence. His colleagues respected his dedication, and his supervisors praised his progress. Even Rachel checked in occasionally, offering guidance and encouragement whenever he doubted himself. One evening, after wrapping up a particularly challenging project, Rachel invited Marcus to join her for dinner at a quiet cafe near the office. Over plates of pasta and glasses of water, they talked about everything from work to life outside the company. Rachel shared stories about her own struggles early in her career, moments when she felt like giving up but pushed through anyway. Hearing her openness made Marcus feel less alone in his journey. "You know," Rachel said thoughtfully, "you remind me of myself when I first started out. You've got that same fire, that same drive to succeed no matter what obstacles come your way." Marcus smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thanks for believing in me," he said. "Not many people would have given someone like me a chance." "That's exactly why I did it," Rachel replied. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible, to feel like the odds are stacked against you. And because I see how much you care, not just about yourself but about others. That's rare, Marcus, don't lose that." As the months turned into a year, Marcus continued to grow both personally and professionally. With Rachel's mentorship, he took on increasingly complex projects, earning recognition from his peers and superiors. His name began appearing in internal newsletters highlighting his contributions to key initiatives. Outside of work, he volunteered with local organizations, teaching coding skills to kids in underserved neighborhoods. It was his way of paying forward the opportunities he'd been given. Rachel watched proudly as Marcus flourished, knowing she had played a part in his journey. But what surprised her most was how much she had learned from him. His resilience, humility, and unwavering optimism inspired her to think differently about leadership and purpose. Together, they became a powerful team, united by a shared vision of creating a better future, not just for themselves, but for everyone around them. Little did either of them know, their partnership was only beginning. Their story was far from over. A year had passed since Marcus Johnson started working at the tech company. In that time, he had grown in ways he never imagined possible. The shy, uncertain young man who had walked into the office on his first day was gone. In his place stood someone confident, capable, and respected by his peers. Marcus had earned a reputation for being hardworking and reliable, always willing to go the extra mile to get things done. His supervisors noticed his dedication, and his colleagues appreciated his willingness to help others. But it wasn't just his work ethic that set Marcus apart. It was his passion for making a difference. Inspired by Rachel's vision and the company's mission, Marcus began proposing ideas to expand outreach programs aimed at helping underserved communities. He suggested partnerships with local schools, coding boot camps for teenagers, and mentorship opportunities for adults trying to transition into tech careers. At first, some of his ideas were met with skepticism. After all, Marcus was still relatively new to the company, but Rachel championed him every step of the way. "You're onto something here," she told him one afternoon as they reviewed his latest proposal. "These initiatives aren't just good for the community, they're good for us too. Diverse teams lead to better outcomes. Everyone wins." With Rachel's support, Marcus's ideas gained traction. The company launched a pilot program based on one of his suggestions, partnering with a nearby high school to offer after-school coding classes. Marcus volunteered to teach some of the sessions himself, eager to share his knowledge and inspire the next generation. Watching the students light up as they learned to create their own apps or websites reminded Marcus of why he had fallen in love with technology in the first place. As the months went by, Marcus's role within the company continued to evolve. He was promoted to a leadership position overseeing the outreach programs, a responsibility that came with its own challenges, but also immense rewards. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt like he was truly making an impact, not just for himself but for others. Every success story from the outreach programs fueled his determination to keep pushing forward. Rachel remained a constant source of guidance and encouragement. She often stopped by Marcus's desk to check in, offering advice or simply asking how things were going. Their professional relationship had deepened over time, built on mutual respect and trust. Yet there was also an unspoken understanding between them, a shared awareness of the unique bond they had formed. They rarely talked about that morning when Marcus had saved her, but it lingered in the background, shaping everything that followed. 1. Evening. As they worked late in the office preparing for a major presentation, Rachel leaned back in her chair and studied Marcus thoughtfully. "You've come a long way," she said. "Do you ever stop and think about how far you've come?" Marcus smiled faintly, glancing down at the papers scattered across the table. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but honestly, I try not to dwell on it too much. There's still so much more I want to do." "And you will," Rachel replied firmly. "Just remember to take care of yourself along the way. It's easy to get caught up in the grind and forget to celebrate the wins." Her words stuck with him long after their conversation ended. That night, as Marcus walked home under the glow of streetlights, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the struggles, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt, and how each step had led him to this point. Despite everything, he felt grateful. Grateful for the opportunities he'd been given, for the people who had believed in him, and for the chance to make a difference. The following week, Marcus received an invitation to speak at a national conference focused on diversity in tech. The event would bring together leaders from across the industry to discuss strategies for creating more inclusive workplaces. When Rachel handed him the email, her eyes sparkled with pride. "This is huge, Marcus," she said. "You deserve this. Your voice matters." Marcus hesitated, unsure if he was ready for such a big stage. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, and the thought of addressing hundreds of people made his stomach churn. But Rachel reassured him, reminding him of all he had accomplished so far. "You've already inspired so many people through your work," she said. "This is just another opportunity to share your story. Trust me, you'll do great." With Rachel's encouragement, Marcus accepted the invitation. Over the next few weeks, he prepared tirelessly, crafting a speech that reflected his experiences and hopes for the future. He practiced in front of the mirror, recorded himself on his phone, and even gave a trial run to a few close friends. By the time the conference arrived, he felt as ready as he could be. The day of the conference, Marcus stood backstage, clutching a bottle of water and trying to calm his nerves. The auditorium buzzed with energy as attendees filed in, chatting excitedly about the sessions ahead. Through the curtain, Marcus could see rows of seats filling up quickly. Among the crowd, he spotted Rachel, seated near the front with a proud smile on her face. When it was his turn to take the stage, Marcus took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. The room fell silent as he adjusted the microphone and looked out at the audience. For a moment, he felt overwhelmed by the sheer number of people staring back at him. Then he remembered Rachel's words. "Trust me, you'll do great." "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. My name is Marcus Johnson, and I'm here today because I believe in the power of opportunity. Not just any opportunity, but the kind that changes lives, the kind that says, you belong here. He went on to share his story, starting with his childhood in a struggling neighborhood and the challenges he faced growing up. He spoke about the missed interview, the gala, and the pivotal role Rachel had played in opening doors for him. He talked about the importance of representation in tech and how companies could create pathways for underrepresented groups. Most importantly, he emphasized the value of resilience, humility, and gratitude. By the end of his speech, the room erupted into applause. People rose to their feet, cheering as Marcus stood there, humbled by the response. As he left the stage, Rachel greeted him with a hug. You were amazing, she said, her voice filled with pride. I told you, you've got this. The conference marked a turning point for Marcus. His speech resonated deeply with attendees, sparking conversations about how to build more inclusive environments in tech. Journalists wrote articles about him, highlighting his journey and the programs he had helped launch. Suddenly, Marcus found himself in the spotlight, invited to speak at other events and participate in panel discussions. It was overwhelming at times, but he embraced it as an opportunity to amplify his message. Back at the company, Marcus continued to lead the outreach programs, expanding their reach beyond Atlanta to cities across the country. With Rachel's backing, he secured funding for new initiatives, including scholarships for aspiring tech professionals and internships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Together, they transformed the company's commitment to diversity into tangible action, earning recognition from industry leaders and community organizations alike. Through it all, Marcus never lost sight of where he came from. He stayed connected to his roots, visiting his mother regularly and mentoring young people in his old neighborhood. He knew firsthand how difficult it was to break free from cycles of poverty and inequality, and he wanted to be a living example of what was possible, with hard work and support. As the years went by, Marcus became a symbol of hope for countless individuals seeking a better future. And while he credited much of his success to Rachel and the opportunities she had provided, those who knew him understood that it was his own determination and heart that had carried him this far. Little did Marcus know, however, that his story was about to take yet another unexpected turn, one that would test everything he had learned and push him to grow even further. Years had passed since Marcus Johnson first stepped into the world of technology. His journey from a struggling young man to a respected leader in his field was nothing short of remarkable. The programs he helped create had touched thousands of lives, giving people from underserved communities a chance to break into tech careers they never thought possible. Schools, community centers, and even other companies began adopting similar initiatives inspired by Marcus's work. Yet, despite all the success, Marcus remained humble, always remembering where he came from and how far he still had to go. One day, while reviewing data on the outreach program's impact, Marcus noticed something unusual. Enrollment numbers for one of their key projects had dropped significantly in a specific region. At first, he assumed it might be due to logistical issues or lack of awareness. But when he dug deeper, he discovered that funding cuts were threatening the entire initiative. Without immediate action, the program would have to shut down, leaving hundreds of students without access to the resources they needed. Marcus knew he couldn't let that happen. He scheduled a meeting with Rachel to discuss the issue, hoping she could help find a solution. When they sat down together in her office, Marcus laid out the problem clearly, showing her graphs and reports highlighting the decline. This is more than just a setback, Marcus said, his voice tinged with frustration. If we lose this program, we're failing the very people we set out to help. Rachel nodded, her expression serious. I understand how important this is. Let me see what I can do to secure additional funding. In the meantime, we need to think creatively about ways to keep the program running, even if it means scaling back temporarily. But Marcus wasn't satisfied with temporary fixes. He wanted a long-term solution, one that would ensure the program's survival no matter what challenges arose. That night, as he lay awake thinking about the situation, an idea began to form in his mind. What if they could partner with local businesses and nonprofits to share the financial burden? It would take time and effort, but it could work, if everyone was willing to pitch in. The next morning, Marcus presented his plan to Rachel. She listened intently, nodding as he outlined the steps they'd need to take. By the end of the conversation, she was smiling. "I like it," she said. "It's ambitious, but it's exactly the kind of thinking we need right now. Let's make it happen." Over the following weeks, Marcus threw himself into building partnerships. He reached out to local business owners, nonprofit leaders, and government officials, explaining the importance of the program and asking for their support. Some were hesitant at first, unsure if investing in such a project would yield results. But Marcus didn't give up. He shared stories of students who had benefited from the program, how it had changed their lives, and slowly he began winning them over. One particularly memorable meeting took place at a small coffee shop owned by a woman named Lisa. She had grown up in the same neighborhood as Marcus and understood firsthand the struggles faced by families there. After hearing Marcus's pitch, she agreed to contribute a portion of her profits to the program. "If you're willing to fight for these kids," she told him, "then so am I." By the time the dust settled, Marcus had secured enough funding to not only save the program but also expand it to include new courses and resources. The announcement was met with cheers from students, teachers, and community members alike. For Marcus, it was a reminder of why he did what he did, to create opportunities where none existed before. As the years went on, Marcus's influence continued to grow. He became a prominent figure in the tech industry, often called upon to speak at conferences, write articles, and advise policymakers on issues related to diversity and inclusion. Yet despite his rising fame, he never lost sight of his roots. Every chance he got, he returned to his old neighborhood, mentoring young people and encouraging them to dream big. Rachel watched with pride as Marcus flourished. Their professional relationship had evolved into a deep friendship, built on mutual respect and admiration. They often joked about how different their lives were now compared to that fateful morning when Marcus had saved her from those attackers. Neither of them could have predicted how much that single act of kindness would change both their lives. One evening, as they sat together at a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, Rachel raised her glass in a toast. "To second chances," she said with a smile, "and to people who refuse to give up." Marcus clinked his glass against hers, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "To paying it forward," he replied, "because that's what makes the world better." Years later, Marcus stood on stage at another conference, this time as the keynote speaker. The room was packed with attendees eager to hear his insights on leadership, resilience, and the future of tech. As he looked out at the sea of faces, he spotted Rachel seated near the front, smiling proudly. Her presence reminded him of everything they had accomplished together and everything he still hoped to achieve. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. "Sometimes it throws obstacles in our path that feel impossible to overcome. Other times it gives us moments of grace, chances to step up, to help someone else, to make a difference. When those moments come, don't hesitate. Take them. Because you never know how far-reaching your actions might be." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And now, it's my turn to pay that belief forward, to create opportunities for others, just like someone once did for me." The audience erupted into applause, many rising to their feet in admiration. As Marcus left the stage, he felt a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he'd ever known. This wasn't just about him. It was about the ripple effect of kindness, determination, and hope. Every person he had helped, every life he had touched, carried a piece of his legacy forward. Backstage, Rachel greeted him with a hug. "You've come so far," she said softly, "and you've done so much good." Marcus smiled, looking out at the crowd beyond the curtain. "We've done it together," he replied, "and we're not done yet." Together, Marcus and Rachel continued to push boundaries, challenging the status quo and paving the way for a brighter, more inclusive future. Their partnership proved that two people from vastly different worlds could join forces to create something extraordinary. And through their efforts, countless lives were transformed, not just for today but for generations to come. In the end, Marcus's story wasn't just about his own rise from poverty to success. It was about the power of compassion, the importance of opportunity, and the enduring impact of choosing to do the right thing, even when it seemed impossible.